Hi guys, it's Kelly Latevola here, and I am back with another video for Neat and Tangled. And this is the beginning of the March release, and so today I'm going to be working with the geometric stencil background and this new stamp set called YoHoHo. It's all pirate themed, it's totally adorable. Typically I prefer one layer cards. There are dies that come that you can also purchase to match the stamp set. And so I decided I was going to go ahead and stamp those down. I stamped in Intense Black ink by Simon Says Stamped because it's copic safe. And then I went ahead and ran them through my Big Shot to cut them out so I could pop them up. Just a little something different today. So for this background, I see rainbows in my future. I see all the rainbows. But I just thought it would be something that could give a little bit of interest to the background so it wasn't just two colored pieces on a piece of white cardstock. So I used Salty Ocean, and then I went in with some brushed corduroy. I wanted to give them like a little bit of like land or something to ground them. And so I'm going to use a post-it note. I was just using my little characters there for placement. So I'm going to put some sticky back post-it notes up there, and then I'm going to add some more brushed corduroy distress ink below the post-it notes. It's not going to be enough, but we're going to worry about it later. So we're going to move on to the copic coloring now. This particular combination is usually my go-to skin tones. So I'm just going to go and cover everything with the E50, and I'm kind of going to be coloring this little boy and this little girl simultaneously. It just seemed like the most efficient way to get it done since I was using the same color scheme for both. So then with my next darkest color, I'm going to go in and add definitely shading around their hairline. On their hands, she's grabbing the sword, he's grabbing the flag post. So the shading for them is going to be, I color everything as if my light source is in the top right hand. So the shading would be on the left hand side of their hands because their little fingers are going to be pointing towards the light source. And then with their hairline, everything's going to be fairly dark because she has a hat on and then he has on the bandana. So there's not going to be a whole lot of light right underneath their hair that's going to get onto their faces. So once I'm out to my darkest color, I'm going to start working my way back toward my lightest, just kind of blending everything out. And when this skin tone is on just white, and I typically color my skin first, it looks super dark. But as you start adding in more colors, it really lightens up. So before I do my last color, I'm going to bring in a little bit of a blush color for this R20, which is ironically actually called blush. And then I'm just going to give them two little circles on their cheeks and then give everything a once over again with the E50 just to blend everything together. Then we're going to move on to their hair. I picked basically like the whole E20 family because I'm going to make her hair lighter and his hair darker, and then I also have to color the handle on her sword and her little treasure box. So these are very tiny pieces of hair, not a whole lot of real estate, but you're going to add shading where it's coming back from behind her head, where her ponytail is a little closer to her body. Definitely shading from out from underneath the hat, that will be darker. I love her little side pony. I think it's totally cute. So I'm going to take that to my darkest color, which for her was a E27, and I really added just a very, very little bit of it because I wanted to keep that the lightest color, that E21, so you could at least see it. Not necessarily that it would be prevalent, but so that you could at least see that it existed. For him, I'm going to skip the E21 altogether, and I'm going to go directly in with the E23. I'm leaving some little white bits on the edge of his hair because he doesn't have, he's not going to have any areas that are particularly highlighted outside of the ends of his hair just because of the bandana that he has on. So for him, I started with the E23, and then my darkest color is going to be the E29. And again, not adding a ton of that, just little flicks closest to the bandana because that's where it would be the darkest. I skipped the E27 and E25 for the blending just because there is not a lot of real estate there, people. And so I was getting fine blending, so I just went back over with the E23 super quick. And then moved on, and I'm doing her treasure box and the handle with the same color combinations I did for his hair. So I'm leaving off that light E21 and just going in directly with the 23. The shading For the sword's pretty straightforward. It's going to be all on the left-hand side if the light source is in the right. For hers, the treasure box, it's a little bit different because her arm would be casting a shadow. So there would be some darker areas like right underneath her arm. And then also more so the bottom of the treasure chest would be darker. I knew I was going to put him in jeans. And so I thought it would be cute kind of if they had like little matching outfits. So we're going to do like a little jean jumper for her. Anytime I'm doing any sort of jean item, material, whatever, the B90s are my go-to. They're just like the perfect jean color. So again, if the light source is in the top right, that treasure chest is going to cast a shadow onto her skirt. And then also where it comes out, where her head is, like underneath her neck, that's all that is going to be darker. Her waistband will be a little bit darker on the right hand side. So if you have trouble with light sources, put something, whatever the object is, pick an object, put it on your desk and then shine a light on it. And then you can see how things lay. So for his jeans, I didn't want the little rolled up bottoms to blend into the rest of his pants. So I left them a little bit lighter. I'm adding some shading behind them. I'm also adding shading to his waistband. I'm not adding the darkest color to all the way up to where it meets. I'm just really shading the inside of his legs because I don't want him to look like he's had an accident. I don't want him to look like it's a bad day to be a pirate. So just make sure you're paying attention to that you're not too heavy-handed in those areas. You're not going to like it. The next color up is going to be red, and for her, she's not going to have a ton of it. So I did her little, back in my day, we called them scrunchies. I think nowadays they just call them ponytail holders. But nonetheless, her hair tie. There we go. That's a nice, politically correct, neutral term, a hair tie. So I'm going to add the red to that, and then also the little stripes on her stockings. I'm going to add red to the stripe right directly underneath her skirt. It will be darker. And then here I got crazy. I just threw caution to the wind and decided I was going to do the edge of her hat red. Why is this terrifying? Well, this is terrifying because I've already die cut these. And if I bleed, reds are if the marker bleeds out, reds are really, really hard to clean up. So I was really, really careful with that tip of my marker because there wasn't going to be any way to hide it because it's the end of the image. So if the marker seeped out into the white border, there wouldn't be anything I can do to save it. For his bandana, I opted just to color the entire thing red. I figured I would go back in with my white gel pen after the fact and fill in those dots. There's a little bit of finicky coloring just with these images because they're super cute and detailed. And so I wasn't trying to make more work for myself. So I'm adding shading where it is gathered there on the right side of his head, even though that's where the light is, because it's gathered, it would automatically be darker. And then obviously it would be darker on the left for this patch. Typically with jeans, the knees are the lightest portion of them. And even though we're coloring with the reds, you still have to pay attention to what makes sense. So there's not going to be any other shading on that patch because it's in the middle of his leg. And it's on the light hand side of the image. So yeah, you're just going to color it one solid red color and then walk away. It's hard for me. I want to add all shading to all the things. So his little red and white striped shirt, there'll be some shading on those stripes depending upon where the light hits it. So on the left hand arm, because it's outstretched, the shading is going to be underneath and definitely in his armpit. On his chest, that arm's covering up, so there'll be shading there. With this arm, I really was like, that's what you saw me hold my marker just to make sure I had the shading right, because I was like, where is the sun going to hit on this? And I really feel like it would hit on the back of his arm, like where his shoulder is. And then once I get out to my darkest, I'm going to go back through just like I always do, out to the lightest and blend everything out. And then we're going to bring in all the cool grays, all of them, snatch them all up, because we're going to be coloring both white and black, and we're going to do it all with these gray markers. So her shirt underneath her jumper is going to be white. when you're coloring anything white, you're just adding in the shadows. So, and then also her little sword. I'm not adding a ton of shading, just some gray on the left-hand side and her skull. So we're going to add in those shadows. We want to leave white areas. If you're coloring something white, there should be white left behind. The little stockings are only going to have just a little bit like on the inside of her legs. And then I blended out the C3 just a teeny tiny bit. I didn't want to cover up the C1, but it kind of needed it. His stripes are going to be the same way. Everything is going to be shaded just like we did the red, but now we're just going to do it with the light grays. I did add a little bit of shading where I felt like his head would be casting a shadow onto that flag. And I picked up the wrong marker. Did you see there? Check your caps. Yeah. Fortunately, I caught it after like 2 little swipes, and it was on the dark side of the image that I started on. So it wasn't like disaster transport, but it could have been. That was my fault. I guess I'm just sleepy. So now that we've colored the whites, we're going to go in and do the blacks. This is going to be her hat and her shoes. My lightest color is going to be a C3. And when we first start doing this, it's just going to look like a dirty gray hat. Like, that's just what it looks like. But bear with me, because as we keep building up that color and adding in the contrast, it will start to look black. So for the C5, I want to leave her toes to be the lightest part, because that would be the part that would stick out the furthest. And then with her hat, where it wraps around her head, there'll be shading there. This is that finicky coloring I was talking about, trying to get around these skulls. In hindsight, I probably should have started with my darkest color, because I really risked the gray bleeding into that skull. I got lucky, it did not. But it was definitely a risk that I was, an unnecessary one that I was taking. So again, we're moving on to the C7, adding in those darker areas. I left a triangle there of the C3, and then on the right hand side I left like a strip and the highest point, from the highest point down to like the brim of the hat, because that's where the highlight would sit. The C9 is going to be our darkest color, and it's really going to start making it look black, putting in that contrast. I'm not covering up the last color I put down. I'm just adding it up to, you know, a little bit of an edge so that everything is blended. On the brim of the hat, I'm definitely using those flicking motions because it's such a wide area. I want everything to just blend really nicely. And then I'll go back in with that C3 just for those lightest points so that it all looks blended. And there we have black boots and a black hat. For him, his black portion is going to be his shoes and then this flag in the background. Again, a little bit more finicky coloring. The reason that I'm not necessarily doing the flicking motion on like her hat or this flag is because it's really, really hard to do when you have an object in the middle that you're trying to avoid. So in these cases, you're better off really just kind of drawing in the areas that you want to be darker and then filling them in. If the colors are close enough, they're going to blend and it's not going to be a big deal. You won't necessarily need the flicking. You're not going to have a ton of texture either, but it's a flag. So really, would I have a ton of texture anyway? You know, in real life, probably not. So I'm not too concerned about it. But I'm just going to keep, like I said, adding in darker colors, not completely covering the color that came down before it. This is another one I probably should have started with my darkest color. It was probably completely unnecessary to just keep adding all of this Copic ink into the paper, but I did it and it's done. So for the darkest color here, I'm going to completely cover the left-hand corner, and then that's pretty much where the darkest color is only going to be in the flag. Working back out toward those lightest colors. His shoes, I got just a little bit heavy-handed with my darks. It's fine. There was still enough of an area there for a highlight. It's just maybe not as distinct as hers is, which I'm totally fine with. Once I was done with the coloring, I told you I was going to grab that white gel pen, so I'm doing that just to add the detail back into his bandana. So much easier, and then trying to color around all those little dots. I grabbed some clear Wink Estella just to put on her sword, so that would be shimmery, as well as the little clasp on her treasure box. Treasure chest. It's not a treasure box. I think I said box earlier too. What the what? So anyway, I knew this ground wasn't dark enough. I wasn't happy with the way that it looked. So I took the same browns that I used for my characters, and I'm drawing in the ground. I'm just reinforcing what I had there with the Distress ink. So once I got like just kind of a couple little streaks down, I'm going to go over it with my lightest color, and then I'm going to go back in and do what they call stippling. And stippling is just a series of little dots. And the reason that I did this is because I felt like it needed some texture. I felt like it just needed a little bit of interest. And then I'm going to keep adding these dots all the way down to the lightest color. And they're just, random dots. I'm taking the darker color down to the next lighter color, but I'm not completely covering it. And then I laid my characters there so I could see where I wanted my sentiment to go. I think the sentiment is so cute. It says, "You are my greatest treasure," and I'm going to be stamping that in black Simon Says stamp ink. So I get a good crisp image. I probably should have used my Misty, but I risked it and it paid off. So then I'm going to use some Scotch foam tape to go ahead and pop up all of my my little characters here on the card. I'm just going to lay him there and not push him down until I get her on the card. So that way if I need to finagle or move anything, I still can without ripping my background. Now that I'm happy where they are, push them down, and then that is the whole card. So in hindsight, I don't necessarily know that I'm in love with the background. I really love that stencil. I just don't know that I probably should use something besides Salty Ocean. But nonetheless, it's done, it's complete. I think the characters are adorable, and I hope you learned a little something. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.